Good morning, Shalom. Good morning, everybody. It's Pride Month, and Pride Month is something very special. I'm very happy that it's not just a Pride Day. We should have every day Pride Day, by the way, but Pride Month is not so bad. So we have very many opportunities to see and discuss so many aspects of LGBT plus matters, and also this linkage to religion. We all do know from our own history, but also from the background we all do have, that the subject LGBT, either in the Jewish communities or in the churches, Protestant, Catholic, whatever, or also in Muslim community, is not that easy. And it's just very difficult sometimes even to say that you are gay, lesbian, or LGBT. And in some, I think the religions of the book, as we say, they all have people who say it's a sin or it's not in accordance with God's plan, whether you're Christian, Jewish, or Muslim. And we have to deal with that at any level and every day. And also in Germany, you might have followed the discussion of the Catholic Church in Germany, who are in this aspect a little bit progressive in giving the benediction to LGBT partnerships, which is not very much digested well by the Vatican in Rome. So you see also the Catholics do have their problems that they discuss within the church. How shall we deal with it? How shall we deal with it from the theological point of view, and is that within God's plans? And the same thing applies to Jewish communities. We do have Orthodox communities up to very liberal ones all over the world. And I'm talking here to already convince people, to put it this way, and you are a part of this strive for equality and acceptance. And I'm always saying, if I may say so, I'm a Christian, but I do believe that, and hopefully nobody's angry about it, God is more generous than human beings. So I do think important thing is we are talking about love, about affection, and love is the main theme of the Torah, of the Bible, the Christian Bible, and also of the Quran. Love is in the center of everything. And I'm always saying how God can disapprove love, because the creation and God created love, which is a part of human life. So, but I do not want to interfere in theological discussions. It's very dangerous, I know very well. But therefore, the more I appreciate to have so prominent people, ladies and gentlemen, here with me, who are representing, I would say, the more liberal Jewish communities. But I do understand from the discussions we had before that there's a lot of awareness now being created also in the more conservative circles. Same thing applies to the conservative circles in the Catholic Church, for example, or in the Protestant Church. So it's I'm looking forward to this discussion, and I wish you all well. Seid gesund. And what's the last thing I'm saying, it's also transatlantic, beyond borders thing, because we are also, as people, as LGBT people, going beyond borders. Let's say the borders of, let's say, the average people. So and LGBT people are inspiring. And if you see history, if you see art, politics, science, and everything in all fields, they are very much inspiration from the LGBTQ community. And it is, you see composers, very famous composers, you see writers and everything, and politicians. And it's not that we are better people, but it's like we are inspiring people. We have a more sensitive view on the world a bit. And so I'm very glad to have rabbis here and a cantor and other involved people to teach me about what's going on in the Jewish communities, and learn about more about what in theology, what is discussed within the Jewish communities. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all in real. I mean, you are real, but you are no avatars, but you are, let's say, hopefully I can see you very soon, and perhaps even in this Pride month. Thank you very much, and seid gesund. Thank you.
Okay, so I start to introduce myself. I'm Helena. I'm living in Berlin in Germany. So for me, it's already in the evening, but that's fine. I had a beautiful sunny day. I'm studying Jewish theology at university and doing my rabbinical studies at the Abraham Geiger College. So I'm not yet a rabbi, but hopefully in a few years or something. And besides my studies, I work with Kesha Germany and some other Jewish German organizations for most of the time for Jewish young adults. And I'm interested in topics like sustainability and feminism, and of course, LGBTQ and queerness in Judaism, but also outside of Judaism. And I try to incorporate all these topics into my studies. And I'm also working in the interreligious dialogue a lot and doing some small or big projects with a lot of people. And I'm very active, or I try to be a little bit active on Instagram, showing some parts of my day or for showing some festivals and holidays, Jewish holidays, and yeah, share my Judaism for more. Oh, I forgot the word. Sichtbarkeit.
Visibility.
Yeah, for more visibility of Jewish life in Germany. Yeah, that's it.
And good morning and good evening to everyone. I am Rabbi Jillian Cameron. I'm the rabbi at Beth Chayim Chadashim in Los Angeles, which is the world's first LGBTQ synagogue. And we are very proud, and I am very proud of that history and the incredible legacy that we have as a celebratory queer and Jewish space for almost 50 years. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary in just about a year from now. So we are starting off on our 50th year together. And I've been a rabbi for 9 years and have had a variety of different experiences as a rabbi, synagogues, working in nonprofits, working with interfaith families and couples, working in the queer community, and it is really a joy to be part of BCC, Beth Chayim Chadashim, and take on the mantle of that incredible queer and Jewish legacy. And I'm just so excited to be here, to be able to have these conversations. I think part of what Helena said too is visibility in a broad sense of having these discussions, being able to talk about who we are, and weave all different voices into what we understand from the queer community, what we understand from the Jewish community, and how we create moments of celebration, acknowledgement, how we struggle through the difficult things, how we raise each other up in the celebratory moments. So I'm so grateful to be here with all of you.
I'm Cantor Juval Porat, and I've been with Beth Chayim Chadashim for almost 13 years, so I'm reaching my bar mitzvah year, and I joined BCC from Berlin, where I was ordained as a cantor, also at the Geiger College. It was not on my dream list or to-do list to move to the United States. I was convinced that I would serve a German-speaking community somewhere in Europe, but as luck, coincidence, or fate would have it, I was offered the position at BCC after meeting with the then president during the Berlin Movie Festival. It was during a panel discussion on Sandy Dubovsky's new feature movie on gay Muslims. So it was all sorts of an interesting set of coincidence that got me to where I am now. And together with my clergy partners, currently Rabbi Jillian, and prior to Rabbi Jillian, Rabbi Lisa Edwards, we work on celebrating, community building, meaning making, ritual inventing, moments that provide a meaning to all of the overlapping identities that we share. Jews, members of LGBTQ communities, interfaith couples, those who weren't born Jewish, different ethnical identities, all those come into play when someone enters the sanctuary, either either physically or virtually, as we have been doing for this past year. And my role is to see how music can contribute to the meaning making and towards creating a strong community that is bonded by memories and by the conviction and agency and encouragement to show up as our whole selves, authentically, courageously, genuinely. So we're going to have a couple of questions to each other, followed by an opportunity for some Q&A. And my first question is to Helena. Helena, can you tell us about that moment that made you go, okay, I know that I am going to become a rabbi and I'm going to apply to the Geiger College, and may I be blessed as I go on my way. How did that happen?
It's now 2.5 years ago, I guess. I was in Boston in the United States on one of those big Jewish conferences, and I saw a lot of rabbis, young female rabbis, and I talked a lot to them. And yeah, basically at the end of the day, that was one of the moments alone in my hotel room where I thought about what's the situation in Germany, where are all these rabbis, and can we have like enough rabbis? And for sure not. And can we have like enough young women rabbis? And that was the point. And back in Germany, I think the conference was only like 5 days, but felt like a month or something. It was in December. There was so much snow and before Hanukkah. And then back in Germany, I contacted the Abraham Geiger College because I knew it from my childhood. I don't know, heard a lot about it. I sometimes say it was for me a little bit like Hogwarts, like the Abraham Geiger College. That's where the magic happens, where you learn all the Jewish theology and all the cool stuff. So I contacted there, and half a year later, I started my studies. And yeah, I'm so happy until now. I would never love to start something else. So yeah, that was the moment.
Incredible. Thank you.
So now I have a question for both of you. How is it working for an LGBTQ reform synagogue in America different from working for a mainstream reform community?
I'll start. I would say in so many ways there's so many similarities. People are searching and seeking community, wanting to find like-minded people. I think there's so many wonderful opportunities for community across the North American landscape. But I think what's different for me and what I've experienced, having worked at sort of a regular mainstream community and now working at BCC, is there is a different sense of connection. There's multiple points of connection and multiple needs for the community, that we come together not just sharing a sense of Jewish identity or connection, but also another layer of shared identity and connection. And as of course we know, all of those things can come together differently. And so there are I think we feel even more connected to one another because of these different levels of identity. And the other, I think, difference is that people seek us out from all different kinds of places too. We are so grateful. We are Los Angeles based, but because of our identity as a queer synagogue, we aren't as much of a neighborhood synagogue as the average Reform or certainly Orthodox, but Jewish community tends to be. We gather people from all over the greater Los Angeles area, and of course this year and in years past as well, have gathered people from all over the country and the world who are seeking a safe, brave, wonderful space where they can have both identities uplifted and confirmed and not have to diminish one or the other to be part of their community. And I think that is a really central piece that I've felt too as a queer Jew. When can you be Jewish and when can you be queer? What are the levels? When do you have to take a step back on something? When do you maybe want to hide something? I think I've certainly felt that in my life of maybe I don't want to talk about this as much. And it's an incredible, liberating feeling to be in a community and to help sustain and build and continue a community as a rabbi, where those things are not either or sometimes you're this and sometimes you're that, but it's really celebrated to be both of those things, and also other things, also the rest of all of our identities. So I think we are clued into the intersectionality of identity in a different way than perhaps other synagogues can be, and really are trying to find those balances, find, like Cantor Juval said, moments of creative, innovative celebration of different pieces of our identity and who we are. And really, I feel a strong sense of responsibility toward creating more of that visibility, more of that creativity, of continuing to think about how we blend these, that it's not two separate things that we are, but how they work together, how the queer identity of our community integrates with Judaism, and what we can create and how we can be that voice and help lift the voices of others across the Jewish community. So there's so many fascinating differences and similarities, but I feel so grateful and blessed to get to struggle and think about these things and be in a place where we're really celebratory, not just accepting, not just tolerant, but really trying to create that celebratory connection for everyone we encounter and who comes into our virtual and hopefully one day soon actual space.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better, I think. The only thing I might add to that is perhaps provide some examples on how it manifests itself. The conversation on whether LGBT synagogues are even needed is a very dynamic and ongoing one, and I do think that the reasons for having a mainly LGBTQ synagogue have changed, not the necessity of it or the need for it. And perhaps the main reason in the 70s was safety and inclusion and integration of all those who were shunned from their main communities has shifted into more of a boundary-pushing, pioneering, joyously experimenting place to explore the ways in which we celebrate all of our identities can overlap in a meaningful way. The main thing, I think, which makes an LGBTQ synagogue so important and so distinguished from a mainstream synagogue is that the majority of the worshippers, the majority of the congregants are identified as LGBTQ or familiar somehow, if one can point out, to a general LGBTQIA experience. But I think we all have a heightened sensitivity around exclusion. We are all kind of familiar with our internalized phobias and how they manifest themselves and how to confront it and process it into a way that is true. Every Friday we acknowledge everyone to come in all that they are, and we offer them a blessing to be who they are, and consider that in and of itself a blessing, which is something I think that a mainstream synagogue would do once a year for a Pride Shabbat. And in a way, every Friday night, which is our main Shabbat service communal gathering event, is a Pride gathering. When same-sex or same-gender marriage became legal in the country, of course, we celebrated immensely as yet another step towards liberation. But we also made sure, and I think that was based on the sensitivity that a lot of us carry, to convey that while this is a wonderful step towards freedom, the heteronormative, monogamous framework of a wedding is not something that each and every one of our members might desire. When we bless our children, we recognize that for many who are single or who are in a relationship and were not able to either adopt children or just bring children into their life, is a source of pain, a source of sadness, and we recognize that publicly. So these are just two examples, I think, that kind of illustrate the heightened sensitivity around being an LGBTQ place. Knowing that, yes, we strive towards equality, but we also are uniquely different in our experience and in the ways we get our needs met. So I hope that complements what Rabbi Jillian said.
Of course. And now, Helena, I'm so curious about how we just talked a little bit about these pieces of our identity, the intersectionality of all the different pieces of who each of us are. So I'm curious for you, as you are in your rabbinic studies and excited toward the future of becoming a rabbi, how does your identity as a queer person impact how you think about what your rabbinate will look like?
I would say my Jewish queer identity influences my studies every day. But it is like especially when I talk to my Jewish queer friends, because every time when I talk with them about whatever, I see how important this topic is and will be in the future. And there's so much to do. And it's like we have in Germany the problem, maybe it's in other countries the same. I don't know a lot about it, but in the Jewish communities, in some Jewish communities, queer people can not be queer openly, so they just can be Jewish. And in the queer communities, the Jewish queer people can only be queer because in the queer communities in Germany is a big a huge problem with anti-Semitism. Most of the time it's Israel-related anti-Semitism. And that's, I think, really hard. I was not part of a queer group in Germany my whole life, so I don't know it myself from the inside, but I know stories from other queer Jewish person, and that's where Kesha Germany comes in, because one goal is that nobody has to decide between their Jewish identity and their queer identity. And we want visibility inside the queer communities, but also inside the Jewish communities. And that's what I'm working on, to be in the future a liberal rabbi who fights for Jewish queer people, who is a person to talk to trust. And in my studies, I like to rely on queer Torah studies. I don't know. I read a lot of queer commentary on the Torah to write my drashot about, I don't know, queer topics, but also a lot about women because I want to present more women in the Torah. So it's both, but there's a lot to do, and we don't have so many books in German. So most of the time I have to read stuff which comes from your side of the world, but that's fine too. And also working on that to have liturgy for queer Shabbatot, for queer Kabbalat Shabbat in German. But I think for me the most important thing is to be a person people can trust, and that's beautiful.
Is there a cohort of other queer Rabbi Cantor students that you have at school, or do you have other connections with queer clergy to be or in Germany?
Yeah, for sure. I'm not alone. There are queer rabbis and there are queer rabbinical and cantorial students, but not everyone is openly queer, so I don't want to talk a lot too much.
Yeah, you don't have to name names.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm not alone, and that's good. And we want to create some kind of list for Keshet, so people know in which city which rabbi or cantor or person is, so they know whom they can talk to, who is a liberal rabbi and would love to do a homosexual wedding and so on. And hopefully the future is more queer and diverse. So I would love to give the question back to you, Jillian.
It's such an interesting question, how one piece of your identity impacts another piece of your identity. I think for a lot of my studies in school, when I was a student, and then when I was a rabbi before coming to BCC, I did feel a certain sense of either or, that I had to choose what part of my identity was most important. And amongst my colleagues, amongst my friends, I didn't have to make that choice, but there was still, I like I said, I became a rabbi 9 years ago, and I was in school, about 15 years ago. And it's amazing how much 15 years can change the way the world is. I remember having conversations when I was first being ordained and trying to find a job, of talking to my other queer rabbinic friends and mentors, and saying, when do I have to tell people? At what point in my job interview process do I have to tell people? Because I didn't want to, and not that I didn't want to. I was out and happy to tell people, but I didn't want that to be a factor in whether or not I was going to be hired somewhere, and whether or not, and I also felt like I needed to express that part of my identity because I wanted to, because it was a part of who I was. And so all of these pieces of conversation and these things you have to think about that perhaps other people aren't thinking about. This impacts a lot of how I went through certainly the beginning of my rabbinate, and thinking about, wanting to create space where people can be all of who they are. And I think that's been such a part of the work that I have done, both within the queer Jewish community and also in a larger sense working. I spent a lot of years as I said, working with the interfaith couples and families, also trying to create space in the Jewish world for families and couples where not every person was Jewish, but was connected to Judaism in a variety of different ways. So I think because of my experiences going through being a queer Jew, being a queer Jewish rabbinical student, all those things, it really impacted my worldview, and wanting to have a rabbinate where celebration of diversity was at the top of my list, was something that values that I saw in Judaism already. I didn't have to make it up. It was there. And how can I, live a life reflecting those values? How can I help bring people in who have felt rejected by the Jewish community, felt rejected by the queer community, or just in general felt like they didn't belong where they wanted to belong? So how do we create those spaces? So for me, that's been such an integral part of my queer and ness influencing the kind of rabbi that I want to be, and really wanting to be that voice, be that welcoming presence, help people explore their own identities. I think we're always continuing to figure out who we are. It's not just one moment in time and then it's over, and we evolve as humans. And so I think being in a community where we can evolve together and explore together and feel safe and comfortable to do so is really important to me, and something that I think certainly reflects who I am in my rabbinate, and the kind of Jewish community and space that I want to create for others.
So, Helena, I have another question for you. Can you tell us more about your German roots and how you feel about a question you might perhaps be asked a lot? Why do you choose to live in Germany, and how does your German identity weaves into your work as a future rabbi?
It is a question which comes up from time to time. In the States or in Israel. It's maybe a little bit more like why I stay here and live here, not just only why I live here. And the answer for me, it's very clear. Even if I asked myself from time to time, do I really want to stay here, or can I really stay here? But that's another question. So my family comes from Germany, and my family survived the Shoah here in Germany. So I am one of the less than 5% German Jewish families which are in Germany right now, because most of the German Jews are from the post-Soviet Union. So it's called Kontingentflüchtlinge. I don't know really how to translate that. And I want to stay in Germany because it's where I come from and where I have my German Jewish roots. And also I'm very proud of Reform Judaism, which is born in Germany. And I also want to continue live here with the traditions which are from Germany. And which I learned, and all the customs and so on. And I want to pass them on for the next generations. And maybe it's from time to time a little bit like I don't want to give up. Like, I want to stay here. You don't get me to leave. That's where I come from. And yeah, and the thing to be proud of German Reform Judaism. Yeah. Juval, I want to ask you, how does your German background express itself in your work as a cantor?
Well, you mentioned Reform Judaism being born in Germany, and I think my education in Germany has always informed my work as a cantor, but the way it has informed it has changed over the years. When I first came to the United States, I didn't quite know, nor was I familiar with the Reform Jewish scene in America, which is basically, I think, how it would look like in Germany if there wasn't World War II. World War II kind of abruptly put an end to this sprouting of the Jewish Reform movement. And ever since then, I think Germany has been, or the Jewish German community, and correct me if I'm wrong, has been occupied with both catching up as well as maintaining a culture of memorialization of the past. And so it's an interesting push and pull. There is, I think, great efforts are being poured into the preservation of music created by the great composers of the early Reform movement in Germany or in German-speaking countries like Lewandowski and Sulzer, at the expense of allowing in contemporary music written by the new center of Reform Judaism, which is in North America. And so when I was ordained, I thought that my job was to be the ambassador of this repertoire, of this music, of this kind of decorum. And it took me some learning curve in the United States to kind of be a dancer in this balancing act of bridging the old and valuable from which we come from, or recognizing those innovators on whose shoulders we stand, while also bringing in not just new music but also new ways of worshiping with a community. Participatory music, choral music, all these things, and it's a great blessing because one slogan, I know the Israeli Reform movement is using it. This is like there's more than one way of being Jewish, and so there's also more than one way of applying music in a service. But I'm very grateful that I have this German education in which I was exposed to all of these composers and melodies. I think what I'm also very, very proud of in my German upbringing is the fact that I was able to allow for Americans to soften their hearts a little bit or open their hearts a little bit when it comes to looking at modern day Germany. For my recital in Berlin, many representatives of BCC flew over from LA to be there. And for many, it was their very first time. And they would have never considered booking a flight to Germany if it wasn't for me. And I am proud of the fact and grateful of the fact, that they, leaned into just taking a chance and going and see Germany, but also in a way I feel like a bit like an ambassador of everything good that Germany has to offer and to present. And interestingly, I wasn't as aware as a resident of Berlin than as a visitor to Berlin of all of the reconciliation work that the country has implemented in just memorials, and there's the Lewandowski Music Festival every year, and every time so every time I kind of function as a tour guide when I bring friends to Berlin or to Germany, it does fill me up with pride to belong to that society, and to be able to function as a bridge and as someone who maybe can answer some questions for those who are a little perhaps intimidated by speaking about Germany and its history, etc. So yeah.
So we talked a lot about things. This is our last formal question for all of you who are thinking about the questions that you'd like to ask. If you want to start putting them in the chat, we'll sift through them in a moment. But for our final formal question for this panel, let's talk a little bit about how we can continue to support the LGBTQIA queer community, and how we already do it, how we can continue to do it. What is the future of this through the lens of our Jewish values, in conjunction with our Jewish community. So whether in North America, in Germany, what are the ways that we continue moving forward in this partnership?
Well, I think so. I always believe that as a human race, we all want to be seen, we all want to be accepted, we all want to be respected, we all want to be loved, we all want to be celebrated. But how we get those needs met, I think, is where we distinguish ourselves based on our experience. And within Jewish tradition, I think we're provided with the instructions to get those needs met, whether it is honor your parents, love thy neighbor as yourself, rise in front of the elder, don't lie, don't steal, all of those things. Don't be silent at the murdering of your neighbor, be kind to the stranger. All of those things can totally be filtered through an LGBTQI lens. There's still exclusion, there's still prejudice, there's still bigotry. Just yesterday I was listening to the chief rabbi of Jerusalem saying not very kind things towards the LGBTQ community who was having their Pride March in Jerusalem. And so it's still up to us to, proudly, kindly, lovingly, creatively, playfully shout out that we still belong, that we do belong, and that we deserve to be recognized. We have agency to be people of faith. We want and deserve to worship in ways that are meaningful to us. And we have Jewish ethics, the Torah, the Talmud, all the discussions and conversations around it. We have the Psalms, we have the prophets to kind of back us up in our requests. I see a question by Larry in the chat, and I think you should be able to unmute yourselves if you have a question. And also to everyone who's watching us on Facebook, please feel free to comment if you have a question. So Larry asks, in the absence of LGBTQ synagogues, is there any institutional framework for queer Jewish community in Germany? How does it differ from North America? And perhaps that is a great segue to a little video that we have on Keshet.
Yeah, maybe we can just see the video from Kesha Germany. They prepared something. Yeah, and after that, maybe I can say a few words if the question is not answered.
Let me see if I can share my screen here, and then I will go ahead and show that video from Kesha. Can everybody see my screen? Yes. Okay. Okay, fantastic. So as Helena mentioned, this is a video recorded by Kesha, and specifically Dahlia Greenfeld, and she's the co-chair of Kesha Germany, an organization dedicated to promoting the rights of and social interaction and dialogue with LGBTQI Jews in Germany. So let me go ahead and play that for you.
Hi, my name is Dahlia Grünfeld. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a board member at Kesha Germany. In 2018, we co-founded Kesha Germany with a group of young Jewish queer activists. And basically what we do is community building, support, and education, both internally in the Jewish community and externally to greater German society. So when we founded Kesha Germany, there really wasn't a space for queer Jews kind of community. There also wasn't any space to explore queer Jewish identity, to learn what it means, to look into Torah or other Talmud texts, and to realize what this own identity means. So it actually meant a lot of the times that one had to decide, am I actively and out Jewish, or am I actively and out queer? So that's what a lot of our members are saying, and this stems from one, for example, in the Jewish community in Germany, you might not know that, but 85% or more are from the former Soviet Union. Also, my family history is also part of that. And with that migration background comes a lot of stereotypes. On top of the stereotypes that we have in greater society about queer people in general, but on top of that, we have this Soviet Union mindset, the Soviet Union identity, also post-Soviet Union identity that plays into the stereotypes against queers, especially in the Jewish community. So this is something that a lot of our members face in the Jewish community and in Jewish spaces, is the discrimination as a queer person. And sometimes that's subtle. That's like, oh, you look so gay, but sometimes it's also very actively. So we do know from our members that some haven't gotten apartments from the Jewish community, who are owned by the Jewish community, or haven't gotten jobs because as a Jewish religion teacher because they are queer. So we do know of these very extreme examples, and they're not rare. But we also know that there's just a general uncomfortable feeling about being out and proud and queer and Jewish. And I think with Kesha Germany, we found a community that changes that. So within the, not even, I think 2.5 years now, that we have Kesha Germany, we have a community that gets together for all kinds of events. And sometimes that's a Shabbat, like a queer Shabbat event or a Pride Shabbat, but also sometimes that it's a queer holiday, so to speak, and we celebrate it in a Jewish way. So it's both. It's really coming together as a community, and on that level, looking towards building community and getting to, again, just knowing another queer Jewish person. And that helps, and I think you might know this, that helps us to be individuals, but also helps us to build this community. And then Kesha Germany also seeks to give support. On the one hand, by matching one-on-one people who want to explore specific problems or identities and talk to other people who are queer and Jewish, but also with a hotline that we're putting together where you can talk to someone who is a professional, so a psychologist, psychologist who can actually advise on this coming out process, for example, or talking to your family members, which is often something that a lot of our members are requesting. And then the education part, what Kesha does is on the one hand internally, so I'm really educating our own peers, our own queer Jewish community about all of these queer Jewish topics, and then also on the outside. So what Jews face in general, whether they're queer or not in Germany, is that there are 3 things that people know about Jews in Germany. 1, anti-Semitism, just in general in the newspapers. 2, Holocaust, because they learn it in school, so black and white in school books. And then 3, Middle East-Israel conflict when it comes up in TV. So those are the 3, and might I point out, very negative aspects where people in Germany identify anything with Jewish. So there's these 3 pillars who are negative. And other than that, Jewish life doesn't really exist in Germany. So compared to the US, where you have in different soap opera and different shows, you have Jewish life appear, whether that's a person or whether that's a comment about Hanukkah, it appears. This doesn't happen in Germany. So Jews in general have this problem that they face a world or a country, a society, where people don't know anything about Jewish identity, Jewish life, and also don't associate anything positive with it. Only this Holocaust, anti-Semitism, Middle East conflict, these negative associations. So on top of that's definitely what most Jews experience in Germany. And on top of that, as a queer Jewish person, what you then have often as a problem is, I spoke to this in the beginning, on the one hand, you have the discrimination inside the Jewish community. So not an understanding for queer Jewish identity, for queer Jewish lives, that it's not a disease, all that. We're still working on that. There's definitely a lot of stigma and a lot of stereotypes within that. And then 2, in the greater society, within the queer world, for example, Jews often face, hilariously enough, it's not really hilarious, anti-Semitism, especially Israel-related in the more lefty, progressive queer community. There's a lot of anti-Semitism that is Israel-based and Israel-related. So that's what a lot of Jews and a lot of people in our community report to us, that within the queer spaces or queer feminist spaces, that is something they encounter. And then speaking to the point that no one knows anything about Jewish life here, and that's a major issue. Speaking on top of that, in this, when we look at Pride in Berlin or Pride in Cologne and other cities, we do know that people are very confused about this Jewish queer identity when we show up. They also love our banners and posters, 100% homosexual and all the banners and posters we have, but we do know that it's something new to them, that is a complex identity, Jewish not as only as a victim, but a proud Jewish person, an out, even queer Jewish person. So this intersectionality on the one hand on discrimination, but also the intersectionality of a positive energy and a positive identity. So those are some of the things that our members and also to some extent myself have experienced. And I hope this helped you to understand a bit about us. And if you want to follow us, you can follow us on Instagram or Facebook or sign up for our newsletter. Most of it is in German, but Google Translate is great these days. And I hope you have a wonderful discussion.
That was wonderful. Thank you. I'm so glad that Kesha exists and is doing the work that they're doing.
We do have one message, or rather one question here that was sent to me, I think, via direct message. So I'll just pose it to the rest of you. Jerry Nodev says, wondering about the possibility of having a gathering for gay and lesbian German Jews with study, worship, speakers, and socializing. That might be directed to BCC.
Yeah, Helena, do you want to come to LA? We'd be happy to have you.
Oh, we could come to you.
Oh yeah, I would love to go to Berlin again. Absolutely. Thank you, Jerry. I think it's a really, this for me is a starting point. This isn't just a one-off conversation that we're having today. I would love to continue the conversations that we're having, continue our connection to Helena. You are certainly an honorary member of BCC at this point, by all means. Anyone is always welcome at BCC, but we would love to have you. But I would love to continue this conversation and think about how we can influence each other and perhaps the larger communities, the Kesha community and other communities in Germany can have more of a connection to BCC. And there are other, of course, wonderful LGBT synagogues in America too. But I think it's a really important conversation that we've started here today, and I would love to see what else we can do with it. So I'm open to it. Does anyone else let me make it so that everyone can unmute themselves. Are there any other questions? I know we're going to finish with a beautiful musical contribution from our beloved Cantor. But I would love to entertain a couple more questions if anyone has any for this panel.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's Jerry Nodev. I'm sorry that I'm not visible. When I posed my comment, before I heard about Keshet in Germany, and what I was suggesting was something happening in Germany itself. And here in the States, we'd call it maybe a conclave or, I don't know, some other name. Have there been regional gatherings or maybe a German-wide gathering of gay and lesbian Jews? Has that happened yet?
Well, I remember it happening when I was in Germany. It's kind of a funny story, but I was serving a congregation in Mönchengladbach then, and the president of the congregation showed up in that gathering, and I had no idea. So it was kind of a funny way to out, I guess, each other.
Any other questions from our wonderful participants?
I have a second, very different question. I was wondering if there's been any sort of outreach to progressive gay Muslims in Germany. I'm directing my question to Helene.
Okay, I couldn't unmute myself. Can you explain it more, or maybe Juve, can you translate
what I mean
it?
by outreach is some chance to dialogue with them. I realize that there's a great deal of bitterness and negativity. I suspect, especially among German Muslims, regarding Israel, and then associating that with German Jews. So has there been any chance to dialogue with progressive Muslims and to make for more understanding and a better relationship?
Okay, so one thing is Keshet is only 2.5 years old. So at the beginning, it was important to create the safe space and to get to know each other and to spread it all over Germany. So now we have Keshet in, I think, four parts of Germany. And second, there is something called Corona. So yeah, we had some online events, but it's like very boring. So many people don't have the time or don't want to sit in the evening more on Zoom and having more online stuff. But it was from the beginning on a point on our list to have dialogue, but later. So first the inside of the Kesha community work, and when we have like a group and we know each other, then to go into the dialogue. Yeah, so it's more a future thing, but now we are, since today we got the news that we can do a real live Pride Shabbat in Berlin at the Berlin Museum in the garden. So it's beautiful. We did that once in the past, and so now it's the first time we are going to plan something in real life again. And I think the dialogue thing is the next one of the next steps to go, because it's very interesting, especially with the Muslim queer community, but also with the church, of course.
Thank you.
All right, maybe just one more question before our musical extravaganza. Rabbi Lisa. Try again.
You know me too well that you won't allow me to unmute. So.
I know. I gotta keep my eye on you.
This has just been a wonderful conversation, and it feels like the start of something to me. I hope that I have a bunch of questions that would just take us in a lot of different directions, and I know we don't have time for that now. I'm really hoping that we can continue this in a variety of ways. For one, I'd love for, I see Jan Wilkins and Sylvia Sukap here, who I know are scholars who are studying Germany and studying American Judaism and queer Judaism. And I'd love to hear them talk about a blend of things. I remember that one of the kids who grew up at BCC for her bat mitzvah speech, I think coined a phrase that we could use at BCC, which was, at BCC, our differences bring us together. And I think that might also apply to this larger conversation that we're having with the German queer community, German Jewish queer community right now. So I just would look forward to a lot more dialogue between our two groups. And I think
Amen. I second that very much so. I think we will continue to have these conversations. And so I hope that everyone enjoyed this conversation. Again, hopefully the beginning of even more opportunities to talk about these things. And I would love to invite our wonderful Cantor Juval to add his musical contribution as we end our event today.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Jillian. Thank you, Helena. Thank you, Kenneth, for making it all happen, reaching out to us in the first place. Thank you, the German Consulate, for hosting us. Our executive vice president was here earlier on. She's from Frankfurt. So for some interesting reason, like the German connections, they just keep on showing up in our small community. It's kind of fascinating. So I've been thinking a lot about kind of what to offer at this kind of Pride season, and I've been struck by a collection of verses patched together by the liturgists, the editors of our prayer books, recited often traditionally by the Orthodox communities at the very end of the service after the concluding Aleinu prayer. This collection of verses is from Proverbs and Isaiah and is generally about the sentiment of being fearless. And I've been thinking in the context of pride what it could mean for us. Of course, fear is a very powerful emotion, which can both protect us, but can also immobilize us, depress us, and paralyze us. And so I think as members of the queer community, we have this privilege or ability to really look into this concept of fear and how dangers or discomfort can be both a trigger to turn away and shut down, or alternatively an opportunity to face something, to face a struggle, to face a challenge, and to show up despite of it, or even be strengthened by the discomfort or discouragement or threat that we might face. And so I wanted to offer this setting as an invitation for all of us, in whatever stage of our lives we found ourselves in, to show up fearlessly, to not be worried of, as the verses say, sudden scare. And then the other dimension of this prayer is just the permission, the agency, the encouragement towards empowerment for us to be members of the queer community as well as people of faith, being given the permission to trust in a God and a power greater than ourselves to help us through, to be there with us all throughout our lives. I would like just to read to you this particular prayer, and then I'll press play. Do not fear a sudden scare, neither of the destruction by the unrighteous. They will plan a conspiracy, but it will be annulled. They will speak their peace, but it shall not stand. For God is with us. Even to your old age I remain unchanged. And even till your ripe old age I shall endure. I created you, I shall bear you, I shall endure and rescue you. And so once again there is this reminder that just like everyone else, we too are made in the image of God, and we can utilize our faith to cultivate fearlessness in our lives. This setting is by Moshe Ganshov, known as a Cantor's Cantor, a teacher and composer who was also a faculty member at Hebrew Union College here in the United States for many, many years. So this is a setting by him, and the piano accompaniment is by Todd Mollenberg, who is also Dr. Todd Mollenberg, who is a BCC member, and I had a pleasure of recording this with him.
Al tira mepachad pitom, al tira mepachad pitom, al tira פחד פתאום ומשועת רשעים כי תבוא לתירה, אל תירא מפחד פתאום ומשועת רשעים כי תבוא. וצאו עצה ותופר, דברו דבר ולא יקום, דברו דבר ולא יקום, דברו דבר ולא יקום, דברו דבר ולא יקום, אל תירא. וצאו עצה ותופר, דברו דבר ולא יקום, וצאו עצה ותופר, דברו דבר ולא יקום, דברו דבר ולא יקום, דברו דבר ולא יקום, דברו דבר ולא יקום, כי
May we have a happy Pride where we can fearlessly show up as our authentic selves.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Helena. Thank you, Kenneth. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, I think, with all of us. And I'm so grateful that we could all be here for this conversation this morning. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Auf Wiedersehen. Tschüss.
Bye.
Bye.
Tschüss.